Hey everyone, my name is Reggie and welcome to my channel. Today I'm really excited to be sharing with you my experiences meeting my favorite author. I'll also be giving away 2 of his books, so 2 of you will have the chance to win. Before we get into the details of this lovely event and this really fun giveaway, wanted to let you know you should subscribe to this channel. It's also one of the requirements for entering that giveaway, so just get it out of the way, hit the subscribe button now. So I've been pretty fortunate to be able to see quite a handful of authors, but this was hands down the best experience I've ever had at an author event. So we walked in, got our seats, and got to hear Fredrik Backman being introduced, walked on the stage, and it was just glorious. He talked a lot about his writing process, his books, and kind of what he thinks about the writing process. He talked a lot about his first book. Also, I learned that it's pronounced a man called Uva. Like Hoover, but not Uva. That's what he told us. And he also told us a really funny story about how that book is actually supposed to be a stupid title, is what he said, because Uva is like a super popular name in Sweden. So it's supposed to be like a man called Bill, a man called Bob. It's supposed to be like a stupid title because it's just like, oh, that could be anyone's name. And so that's like the definition of something that's lost in translation. I thought that was a really fun tidbit. He also talked a lot about sports and how they affect his books and his writing, because if you don't know, he really loves sports, and he was touring For Us Against You, which is a sequel to Beartown, and both of those books rely heavily on sports. He also talked about characters and writing and how he starts every book with an emotion he wants you to feel when you close the book. He talked about his writing mate and how he got into writing, and just a lot of really fun moments. I have a clip. I'm going to go ahead and insert it here so you can see him talking. This was one of my favorite things he said during the event, so I was glad that I was able to capture it.
Nicholas is a way better writer. He has a much higher language ceiling than I have. But he reminds me every day that's what we are doing is trying to learn a craft. And I've just started that. I just happened to win the lottery with my first, but that's got nothing to do with, you know, the quality of writing, how well you do your craft. And I want to spend my life doing this and be good at it. And the dream for me and for Nicholas is to have a long career. That's how we measure things. Our idols are George Carl Oates and Stephen King and Margaret Atwood, and these people who have been around forever, who has had long careers and still have something to say.
It came to the point where we were doing Q&A and no one was getting up to do Q&A, so I was formulating my question. I was about to go up and have my Q&A, and a person jumped right in front of me and she got the last question, which is okay because it was just so much vindication. She asks him about how she can get her child, who is a teenager, engaged in something other than the internet, something like sports, like these kids do in these books of his. And she's like, my daughter's always engaged in her phone. She's always looking down, and I just want her to be, you know, not doing that. And Backman took a moment to answer. He like kind of paused and he's like thinking about it, trying to give her an answer that will please her, but he finally comes out and says, I hate to take the child's side when you're asking me for tips on parenting, but I'm going to because the internet's great and social media is fantastic. And he talks about how he thinks if he had the internet when he was a kid, he would have, you know, found friends that he related to and people who didn't make him feel weird and had similar things to him. And he's like talking about how the internet is a great place and just a different place and a different way to experience the world and a great way for people to find themselves. And he gives great examples because he's saying things like, you know, you see those kids who like take a bunch of selfies, but what you're not thinking about is they know how to get the best lighting and the best angles. They Google the lighting and they know more about angles than mathematicians. And he's just giving this like beautiful love story speech to social media and kids and the internet, and I loved it so much. At first I was like, she was the person who stepped in front of me to ask a question, but it was like such sweet vindication. His answer was so beautiful, and it made me respect him so much more because he's not like one of those people who like brushes off the internet. He like gets it. And that's like kind of the feelings I get when I read his books all the time. It's like, oh, he gets it. So after his talk, we left the auditorium, got in line to get to the signing. When I got to the front of the line, I had all my books stacked up in my hands. I had like 4 or something, a lot. And I was like, oh my gosh, Everyone has like had like one or two. So I wasn't sure how this was gonna go. I handed them off to his agent or whoever was handing them the books. The first thing they noticed was all the tabs in My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, which was the first book of his I read, and also the book that really attached me to Fredrik Backman as an author, because if you don't know the story, this book was sent to me by the publisher Attribution Books a few years ago when it came out in paper back in the US. I had to review it about 3 weeks after my grandfather passed away, so I read it at a very interesting time in my life and I connected to it so much. I hadn't paused to think about how I felt. I hadn't stopped to really grieve properly until I read this book. So it really helped me grieve and it changed how I grieved. They're kind of rushing people through this line. He is in Cleveland. This event is in Cleveland and it's the night of game 4. He has tickets to the Cavs game. Everyone, like, they're giving everyone their fair time, but they also want to get him to that game if they can, because this is a man who loves sports and this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. He's in the US and in Cleveland at the time. The Cleveland is game 4 and it's like, what are the odds? His publisher's got him tickets. Like, of course they want him to get to the game as quickly as possible. So anyways, as soon as I noticed the tabs, someone asked me like, oh, are you a librarian? I said, no, actually I'm a reviewer. She asked where. I said, YouTube. She's like, oh, so does that mean you do booktube? Which was super awesome. I was like, what? Yeah, I thought this was just like maybe a person who was there like helping people or something. Turns out it's actually the publicist who sent me the arc of Us Against You. First originally sent me My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, and it was just like an insane experience. Once I told her my name and my channel name, she recognized me. It was a whirlwind of experience. But I took that moment to transition into Backman and tell him like, thank you so much for writing this. I actually read it and I explained the thing, you know, your publisher sent it to me for review and I actually ended up having to read it like right after my grandfather passed away, but like that was actually the best thing that could have ever happened. I explained that whole thing to him and he, first of all, was like super sweet about it. He's like, oh, I'm sorry to hear your grandfather passed away. He told me thank you so much for sharing my story. It was really a beautiful moment, but I also got a really good moment with his publicist talking about booktube and everything. And back up a minute, I didn't know it was her at first, so she's like, oh, maybe I emailed you, and it's like, oh, maybe. And I pulled out this out of my bag because I hadn't pulled out the arc to get it signed. And she like turns the book over and is like, yeah, that's me. I was so fortunate because I got the most time out of him. I truly believe I got the most time out of him and out of all of them because they didn't rush me. They were so excited to meet me and they all thanked me for what I do and for reviewing his books. His publicist was like, oh yeah, you're gonna post a review, like you're gonna post a good review, and Bachman's like, you don't have to post a good review. That was just like the kindest thing to say to a reviewer, is like, you know what, just like say it how you mean it. You don't have to like my books. I just love that he's like that. Like, of course I love his books, but it brought a whole new level of respect. So as I had pulled this book out, she's like, oh, do you want this personalized too? After I said like, yeah, she just handed it to him and was like, sign this one too. So I got my arc personalized, which I didn't think I would get to. So I got all of these books personalized. I obviously got My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, Beartown, Us Against You, which was signed but was personalized, A Man Called Uwe, and the arc, which I told you a story of how the art got signed. Honestly, this was like the greatest of book signings I've ever been to and greatest of experiences, not just because of meeting my favorite author, but just the entire experience just floored me. It was so amazing. As we were walking away, Backman and the publicist both hugged me, hugged Manny, who was just there, didn't even say anything to them really, just took pictures, which was super sweet. We'll post the pictures here so you can see. Manny came with me and had a ticket. He got a copy of Us Against You. Atria Books did send me a copy of Beartown to give away. So this was sent to me by the publisher to give away to one of you. This is not signed. This was purchased with my own money. This is signed. Paperback, hardback. Separate giveaways. So you can read these books together. You could read 1 and 2, they're series, but you can also read them standalone. You could read just this one, not continue. You could read just this one and not read this one. I do recommend reading both, but I will be giving them away separately. So 2 people win. Details for entry: you must be subscribed to my channel. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Just per usual for my giveaways, Rafflecopter down below with all the details for extra entries, but please make sure you're subscribed. Give this video a thumbs up. I hope you're excited for the possibility of winning one of these 2 books. That is all for today's video. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, especially since those are both requirements to enter this giveaway, and go find the link down below for more details about the giveaway. We'll have this giveaway open for like a week or so, and I'll have the dates where it closes on the screen and down below. And that's all for today's video, so I'll see you in my next one. Bye!